الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين ونصلي ونسلم على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. نعم. اقرأ.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفر إنه كان توابا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
سيدنا محمد وعلى آله. Don't do these sukoons in the middle. If you're going to connect it with the harakat.
سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، اللهم اغفر لنا ولوالدينا ولمشايخنا ولجميع المسلمين والحاضرين. فبأسانيدكم حفظكم الله تعالى إلى أمير المؤمنين في الحديث الإمام البخاري رحمه الله تعالى قال:
إلى أمير المؤمنين في الحديث الإمام البخاري. نعم.
إلى أمير المؤمنين في الحديث الإمام البخاري رحمه الله تعالى قال: حدثنا عياش بن الوليد قال حدثنا عبد الأعلى قال حدثنا محمد بن إسحاق عن يزيد بن عبد الله بن قسيط عن محمد بن شرحبيل أخي بني عبد الدار عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال: سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول.
You'll leave inshallah. It'll make your recitation even better. You read amazing. It's just, it'll get a lot better. It'll sound so much more. No.
سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول: ما تكلم مولود من الناس في مهد إلا عيسى بن مريم وصاحب جريج. قيل: يا نبي الله، وما صاحب جريج؟ قال: فإن جريجا كان رجلا راهبا في صومعة له، وكان راعي بقر يأوي إلى أسفل صومعته، وكانت امرأة من أهل القرية تختلف إلى الراعي فأتت
Our teacher Shaykh Ṣafwān, when we would read, he would say jawwid. Jawwid, according to them, doesn't mean read with tajwīd. They don't mean read with tajwīd. They mean read in a way that the meaning is understood in the reading. Meaning you're reading in a way that it actually reflects the meaning, not just هكذا. And that doesn't negate reading fast. You can read fast while still keeping the meaning understandable, because at the end of the day you're reading Arabic. So when you're reading Arabic, the Arabic has a meaning to it. واضح? So when we read a hadith, we also read them with the meaning intact, keeping the meaning in mind, so that when the person listens, he understands the meaning. This matters because, for example, if the kalam is jadid, if there's a new kalam that starts, and you just connect the two statements as if it's the same kalam, it's going to be muhim. It might suggest that the kalam is different. Like over here in this regard, you said فَإِنَّ جُرَيْجًا كَانَ رَجُلًا, so you stopped at قال يا نبي الله وما صاحب جريج. قال, and this is the statement of the Messenger. فَإِنَّ جُرَيْجًا كَانَ رَجُلًا راهبا في صومعة له وكان راعي بقر يأوي إلى أسفل صومعته. هذا يوهم. واضح? That the راعي بقر and جريج is the same thing. It's not the same thing. Okay, what would you say? فإن جريجا كان رجلا راهبا في صومعة له وكان راعي بقر يأوي إلى أسفل صومعته. This is a separate. وكان راعي بقر is a separate discussion. Same thing with Qur'an. When you recite the Qur'an, that's why you have to recite Qur'an upon people that know Arabic. Number one, they have to know Arabic, because how are they going to know where the waqf is supposed to be done if they don't know Arabic? And on top of that, individuals that have recited their Qur'an and read their Qur'an upon strong Qur'ā, keeping in mind the meaning of the Qur'an intact. Where you do waqf can change the entire meaning. Where you do waqf in the Qur'an, and likewise in other than the Qur'an, the Hadīth as well, will change the entire meaning. It can change the entire meaning. So it's extremely important to read upon people that where is the waqf meant to happen after the jumla is completed. This is just give you guys this is like a tangent, but just to mention it as it is really important. The jumla is completed, that's where the waqf happens. You don't do waqf after the mubtada. You cannot. The problem is sometimes in Arabic there are prolonged sentences. So the breath runs out. So people, they do waqf after the mubtada and then they mention the khabar separately. This is a khata. You complete the jumla and then you do waqf. The waqf is not done in the middle of a sentence. It's not done after the mubtada. That is muhim. That the next part is actually part of the initial sentence. So you do waqf after the mubtada and the khabar are both completed together. Likewise, if there's a jumla tafsiriyya, for example, that comes after a previous jumla, what's correct is not to do waqf between the two, because the second jumla is doing tafsir of the first jumla. If there's a jumla to shart, how can you do waqf after the jumla to shart and leave the jumla to jaza? It makes no sense. واضح. If someone goes like وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. لا, هذا خطأ. This is wrong. It makes no sense. Anyone who listens to you in Arabic is like, what's this guy saying? Okay, so the whole purpose of studying Arabic properly is so that when we incorporate these rules, these grammatical understandings, syntax, nahwa, where is the mubtada, where is the khabar, if there's a jumla tafsiriyya after, for example, when is it, for example, when do you stop, where the waqf should be happening, where it shouldn't be happening. The whole point is to incorporate it in the reading, number one, especially of the Qur'an. Okay, because the place you do waqf can change the entire meaning in the Qur'an. It can change the entire meaning of the Qur'an. Okay, and sometimes the meaning becomes very problematic if it's done in the wrong place. Sometimes you're reading Taraweeh and a Hafiz, mashallah, he's a Hafiz, doesn't mean he doesn't understand the meaning. That is the problem with making Huffaz lead, who don't actually know the meaning, or they're not trained as to where the waqf should be done. Sometimes it's a big mistake that can happen. I'll give you guys a simple example. This happened. This was intentional, but just to make you guys understand. Allah says in the Quran, وَهُوَ اللَّهُ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَفِي الْأَرْضِ يَعْلَمُ سِرَّكُمْ وَجَهْرَكُمْ وَيَعْلَمُ مَا تَكْسِبُونَ وَهُوَ اللَّهُ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَفِي الْأَرْضِ يَعْلَمُ سِرَّكُمْ وَجَهْرَكُمْ وَيَعْلَمُ مَا تَكْسِبُونَ. Is Allah trying to say He is in the heavens? If you stop, you say وَهُوَ اللَّهُ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَفِي الْأَرْضِ يَعْلَمُ سِرَّكُمْ وَجَهْرَكُمْ وَيَعْلَمُ مَا تَكْسِبُونَ. غيرت المعنى. You change the entire meaning. It drastically changed the meaning and gave a meaning to the verse which was not intended at all. وَهُوَ اللَّهُ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَفِي الْأَرْضِ يَعْلَمُ سِرَّكُمْ وَجَهْرَكُمْ وَيَعْلَمُ مَا تَكْسِبُونَ. نعم. Yani in the heavens and the earth, He knows everything you do. Nothing. What's the purpose of this? You can't hide anything from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah knows exactly what you're going to do and everything you're going to do. Someone said, وَهُوَ اللَّهُ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَفِي الْأَرْضِ يَعْلَمُ سِرَّكُمْ وَجَهْرَكُمْ. طيب في السماء لا يعلم سركم وجهركم. واضح. So learning where the waqf is meant to be done, incorporating that into your reading of both hadith and the Qur'an, this is extremely important. And the only way you can learn that is first, number one, you have to learn syntax, and you have to learn Arabic, and you have to know how the Arabic language works. And based on that, you are able to incorporate that into your reading. If the Arabic is weak, then you have no idea. Then it's just, هكذا. And someone who knows Arabic and knows what's being read will be like, what are you doing? What's going on? Because big mistakes sometimes, and the meaning is drastically represented. Now I'm going.
فأتت أمه يوما فقالت يا جريج وهو يصلي فقال في نفسه.
See, this is a khata. Even in my print over here, look at this. This waw is waw haliyya. So the asal is that you connect it. Now, so putting this this over here is not needed. فقالت يا جريج وهو يصلي, and you shouldn't stop completely. يا جريج وهو يصلي. The ma'na is gone. The waw is waw haliyya. And she called upon him saying, يا جريج وفي الحال أنه كان يصلي. Does that make sense? نعم, go on.
فقال في نفسه وهو يصلي أمي وصلاتي فرأى أن يؤثر صلاته ثم صرخت به الثانية. فقال في نفسه أمي وصلاتي فرأى أن يؤثر صلاته ثم صرخت به الثالثة. فقال أمي وصلاتي فرأى أن يؤثر صلاته. فلما لم يجبها قالت لا أماتك الله يا جريج حتى تنظر في وجه المومسات. ثم انصرفت. فأتي الملك بتلك المرأة وقد ولدت. فقال ممن؟ قالت من جريج. قال أصاحب الصومعة؟ قالت نعم. قال اهدموا صومعته.
قال اهدموا, همزة الوصل. قال اهدموا
صومعته وأتوني به
So this is not, you don't stop here. قال اهدموا صومعته وأتوني به. This is one statement. Now go on.
فضربوا صومعته بالفؤوس حتى وقعت فجعلوا يده إلى عنقه بحبل ثم انطلق به فمر به على المومسات
فمر به. You have فمر به. فمر. You have فمر به. لا it should be فمر به.
فمر به على المومسات.
Which print is it? Darul Jawzi? Yeah, there's too many mistakes. Every hadith has mistake. Now go on. The hadith doesn't have the mistake. The way they published it is filled with mistakes. Now, that's a problem. So as of right now, Darul Ibn Kathir, who has Darul Ibn Kathir? Seems like you guys have it right. فَمُرَّ بِهِ, it says فَمُرَّ بِهِ. Naam. So look, the most important, keep all of this in mind, guys. This is the reality of ilm al-riwayat al-hadith, right? This is what is ilm al-riwayat al-hadith. The most important when it comes to the books of hadith is ḍabṭ al-matn. ضبط المتن. Okay, what does that mean? The tashkīl. This is another mistake. You know, in the Indo-Pak region, they have books of hadith that don't have tashkīl. They don't have i'rāb on them. Like so, the writing, like the way you see it on the screen, there's barely any harakat, right? This is not good. Like, why is it not good? The reason we say this is not good is because yes, once upon a time, maybe the teachers were so careful that every single letter they were referencing back and they were preparing and they knew exactly, making sure that it was read properly. The problem is now that's not happening. What's happening now, students, they read, the harakat are not there, they're making mistakes. They're reading the hadith wrong. Samāʿ is not muttasil in that matter. You read the hadith wrong, you don't read the hadith, you read something else. And if we're not trying to fix this and make sure that it's corrected in the process of the reading, okay, then that is against the adab of samāʿ al-hadith. It's against the ilm riwayat al-hadith. The whole purpose of riwayat al-hadith, why do you read upon a teacher? So he corrects your reading and makes sure you read it right. So number one, you should always read with books that actually have tashkīl. They say, for example, don't read with books that have tashkīl. Why? Because we want people to practice the reading of Arabic. We say hadith is not the place you're supposed to be practicing your reading of Arabic. The practice has to occur in other books. Go read something else. Don't read the hadith of the Messenger of Allah and trying to butcher the words of the Messenger of Allah so that you can practice how to read Arabic. This is not the place for you to practice how to read Arabic. Practice and application needs to be done elsewhere. Okay, this is an ilm. There's a method that has to be passed down. There's a method that has to be transmitted. So it's better that the book that you use and the book that you purchase has the exact tashkīl, meaning the harakat are mentioned. That's number one. Number two, in the end, what will differentiate between the different prints of a book? ضبط al-matn, that is the most important part. What does that mean? The matn, the tashkīl is done properly. The matn of the hadith. Who cares about the hashiyah? Hashiyah is irrelevant. Hashiyah is a bonus. For example, he's mentioning the hukm al-hadith, he's doing takhrij properly, he's sharh al-gharib, for example. This is all a bonus. If the ḍabṭ al-matn is lacking, we don't need that bonus. And this is the difference between fard and nafil. Someone's leaving his fard and is bringing nawafil. ماذا نقول? We say, you're making a mistake. ضبط al-matn is what differentiates between the tahqiqat. The publications, if you're comparing, and this is also from ilm riwayat al-hadith. Whenever we read books of hadith upon our teachers, all of the publications that were out there, every single publication, there would be one student, or there would be students that would have different publications. Meaning, usually we would try, in Medina when I read with my teachers, let's say there's 10 students in the majlis and there's 5 prints out there. Those 5 prints had to be mawjood in the majlis. Okay, someone had to have, like the 5 prints had to be there so that we could cross-compare between the prints. And sometimes if you couldn't find a print, they would make someone open it by way of PDF. Why? Because this is what it is. This is ilm riwayat al-hadith. We need to do ḍabṭ al-matn. We need to make sure that the matn is correct. The whole purpose of reading hadith upon a teacher is for him to tell you and clarify for you, okay, this is the way it's supposed to be read. Okay, and this was a mistake, and so on and so forth. Mistakes that are made in publication is unavoidable. But if there's two mistakes that are occurring on each page in publications, okay, in each hadith there's multiple mistakes, that means that publication is to the side. Does that make sense, guys? Okay, and there's 2 places, one is the matn and the sanad. Both of them, they have to be very careful, because this is what matters. This is the whole reason we need ulama, scholars of hadith, to actually do these tahqiqat, is so that they actually study it properly and they make sure that the harakat are correct. This is the whole gharat. This is the main purpose of ilm riwayat al-hadith. And actual ilm riwayah, what is it? Ilm riwayah is where you study upon a teacher who is going to clarify this for you. If you're reading books of hadith upon teachers and all they're talking about is masail fiqhiyah, they're not teaching you hadith. And this is not ilm riwayat al-hadith. And your samāʿ is not muttasil properly. Because all they're focused on is masail fiqhiyah. They're teaching you fiqh. That belongs elsewhere. Books of fiqh are for something else. Riwayat al-hadith is an ilm in of itself. And it's an ilm, unfortunately, which is non-existent now. It doesn't even exist in so many parts of the world. Alhamdulillah, there's a revival happening and so many people are focusing on these things now. But this is ilm riwayat al-hadith. This is aynu riwayat al-hadith. Which is that you focus on the matn and the ḍabṭ of the matn, and you focus on the words, and if there's, this is it. And you studied in Nukhbat al-Fikr and books of Mustalah, for example, where they speak about this, the importance of ḍabṭ and the importance of why do you read a hadith, why you read the books to begin with among the teachers of hadith that have taken it from their teachers. Why does this matter? It matters for this reason. That you read upon a teacher who has an asl, and as he's transmitting the wording to you, that asl was compared to a teacher or with the asl of his teacher, and so on and so forth. So there's a sanad that rectifies or clarifies for us the ḍabṭ of these alfāz in the books of hadith. That's why when you open up the shuruh of al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, the way they do ḍabṭ is ḍabṭ bil lafz. And they'll tell you bihā'in muhmalatin or kada kada. They word it out because the dots, they can't trust them. Sometimes the dot could be erased, sometimes someone could misunderstand. They literally word out the letters. This is the extent of the ḍabṭ. That's why in Fath al-Bari, for example, when you open up for those of you in Dawrah, on every single hadith they have these discussions. The problem is, mashallah, our Dawrah students, we're supposed to be studying ilm riwayat al-hadith and supposed to be studying hadith, are focused on fiqh more than they focus on this. So they just skip all this, like, oh, that's all amrun qad furiga minhu. So who cares? Let's just go to the ma'ani. Okay, no, this is an ilm in of itself. واضح. Yeah, go on.
فمر به على المومسات فرآهن فتبسم وهن ينظرن إليه في الناس فقال الملك ما تزعم هذه؟ قال ما تزعم؟ قال تزعم أن ولدها منك؟ قال أنت تزعمين؟ قالت نعم. قال أين هذا الصغير؟ قالوا هو ذا في حجرها. فأقبل عليه فقال من أبوك؟ قال راعي البقر.
قال إيش؟
قال راعي البقر. قال الملك
قال إيش؟ راعي البقر. That's what it says? No, راعي البقر. نعم.
قال الملك
This is a جملة. واضح؟ It's not a مفعول قال. نعم قول.
أنجعل صومتك من ذهب.
يعني قال هو راعي البقر. That's the point. نعم.
قال الملك أنجعل صومعتك من ذهب؟ قال لا. قال من فضة؟ قال لا. قال فما نجعلها؟ قال ردوها كما كانت. قال فما الذي تبسمت؟ قال أمرا عرفته أدركتني دعوة أمي ثم أخبرهم.
نعم. This was the narration we mentioned. We were going through it. And there was some discussions that were left. We mentioned the first initial discussion regarding the statement of the Messenger ما تكلم مولود في الناس من الناس في مهد إلا عيسى بن مريم وصاحب جريج. طيب. After this, we'll mention some fawaid that we can get from this hadith. Number one, in this hadith, there's ithbat of the karāmāt of Awliyā. al-Sunnah wal Jamāʿah, we believe in the karāmāt of Awliyā. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has certain friends, He has certain righteous slaves, and He blesses them with karāmāt. And what are karāmāt? Umur, matters which entail kharqul ādah. There are two things. There are logical impossibilities and there are practical impossibilities. There are logical impossibilities and practical impossibilities. A logical possibility is a combination or a gathering of a contradiction, for example. Jam'un naqidain, right? Like either it's day or it's morning. It can't be day and morning in the exact same place at the same exact time. Okay, because the definition of day, or not morning, day and night, malish. Either it's day or it's night. It can't be day and night at the exact same time in the exact same place. Because the definition of day is that it's not night, and the definition of night is that it's not day. So this is what we call istihala aqliya. Istihala aqliya is where you're gathering between two things that are complete contradictions. Complete contradictions. And you study in the books of mantiq that they place 8 conditions in this. But the majority of them, like the muhaqqiqun from the manatiq, they say they early just goes back to 2 conditions with the ittihad al-mawdu' and ittihad al-mahmul. Ittihad al-mawdu' and ittihad al-mahmul. Mawdu' yani the mubtada and mahmul yani the khabar. They both have to be the same. In order for, in both sentences, there has to be at the same exact timing in order for, and the same exact essence of the 2 statements have to be there in order for a contradiction to be established. We learn the details of this in the books of mantiq, for example. You can say, for example, Zayd is in Canada, Zayd is in Medina. This is a contradiction. Okay, but what if someone says, for example, Zayd is in Canada in terms of his physical body, but his heart and his mind is in Medina because he loves the city of al-Madinah Munawwara. So we say, this is why we place those conditions. With all else equal, meaning with all the perspectives in mind, if they are literally, the literal meaning is being intended in both statements, and then there are direct contradictions, they cannot gather at the same exact time. Does that make sense? You learn the details of this in the books of mantiq. So the point is, when a contradiction is established, a gathering between the two is a logical impossibility. This can never happen. But as for istihala adiyya is basically that there are certain laws that govern our universe. Like for example, fire burns. Like, how do you know that this is istihala adiyya? The hukum of fire burning is a hukum adi. You guys study this in the books of usul and books of mantiq. The hukum of fire burning is a hukum adi. What does that mean? It means the only way you're able to determine this hukum is by way of ada and tajriba, and not by way of intellect. Not by way of intellect. Meaning intellect alone without the combination of ada and tajriba is not enough to determine that fire burns. Someone had to touch it and be like, okay, this burns. And then touch it again and be like, this burns. And it keeps on happening. That repetition of that action, continuous repetition of that action is what allows you to determine that fire burns. We call this a hukum adi, not a hukum aqli. Hukum aqli is where intellect alone is able to determine that this is what it is. Okay? So any ahkam that are created by way of ada, and all of the laws of physics, because physics is what? A study of natural laws that govern our universe. For example, the law of gravity, for example. All these laws, they are what? Ahkam adiyya. Why? Because the intellect alone is not able to determine these laws. You have to actually experience and go through the whole process of experimenting in order to arrive at these laws. So when you keep on touching fire, everyone keeps on, every single time you want to, experiment with this theory, you can experiment and the conclusion will always be the same. That is able to determine for you a hukum adi. So, an-naru muhriqa, this is a hukum adi, it's not a hukum aqli. Why is it not a hukum aqli? Because the intellect alone, without the process of tajriba, would not be able to arrive at this hukum. The ahkam adiyya, guys, the impossibility, the opposite of the ahkam adiyya, is not a logical impossibility. It is a practical impossibility. Could Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have created fire and make it the one that extinguishes what we call fire now, and created water and put the property within the water that it is the one that burns? Could it have been that way? The answer is yes. The fact that you can say it could have been that way means that this is a hukum adi. The opposite of it is not a logical impossibility. It's a practical impossibility. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's qudra is muta'alliq with practical impossibilities. Meaning if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes to take something which is a practical impossibility and make it occur, Allah can make it happen. Fire burning is a hukum adi. If Allah wants fire not to burn, Allah can make fire not burn. And this is called kharqul ada. This is breaking of the ada. The karāmāt and the mu'jizat of the anbiya, the karāmāt of the awliyā, are all from this qabil. It's kharqul ada. The customary practical laws that govern our universe, these laws, they are broken in the karāmāt of the awliyā as well as the mu'jizat of the anbiya. Alayhimu salatu wassalam. Allah does not break ahkam aqliyah. Like, can Allah break ahkam aqliyah? We say Allah's qudra is not muta'alliq with ahkam aqliyah to begin with. And the way you can describe this, in order to make sense of this, I say, for example, what is an-naqidan, maybe two direct opposites? Knowledge and ignorance. Someone is knowledgeable regarding a certain matter, someone is ignorant. So either he knows that matter, like for example, let's say Zayd is at home. Either you know Zayd is at home, or you don't know Zayd is at home. Like either you know as in you're certain and you're correct that he's at home, or you don't know. It's one of the two. You can assume, but your assumption is not knowing. That's actually an assumption. Either you know or you don't know. These are opposites. So if you know, that means you're not jahil regarding it. And if you don't know, that means you are not alim regarding it. يعني إذا قلنا أنت تعلم أن زيدا في بيته هذا يعني أنك لا تجهله. وإن كنت, if we say أنت تجهل أن زيدا في بيته هذا يعني أنك لا تعلمه. These are opposites. طيب. What is the hukum of النقيضان, guys? لا يجتمعان ولا يرتفعان. Anything which are any direct actual opposites, they cannot gather at the same time, and neither can they be lifted at the same time. So إذا ثبت النقيض, يعني the moment you establish one naqid, at the same time you're establishing the other one is not existing. And the moment you establish one is not existent, you're establishing the other one is existence. It's the same statement. You don't have to establish two separate. However, there is a qayd to this. النقيضان لا يجتمعان ولا يرتفعان إذا كان من شأنهما فيما يكون من شأنها أن يوصف بأحدهما. This qaid is extremely important, and this will make sense of everything. What do we say? Two opposites cannot gather, and two opposites cannot be lifted when it comes to something that can actually be described with one of the two. Does that make sense? What do we mean by that? We say, either you know Zayd is in his house. If you know, then you're not ignorant of it. If you're ignorant of it, then you don't know it. Correct? طيب. And we say, the moment I establish you know, what is that at the same time I'm establishing? You're not ignorant. And if I establish you're ignorant at the same time I'm establishing, you don't know. طيب. What about a water bottle? If I were to ask you, if I were to make a statement, the water bottle is not aware that Zayd is in his house. Okay. Does that mean that I'm doing nafi? Does that mean, or I'm saying the water bottle, for example, is aware that Zayd is in? If I said the water bottle is not aware that Zayd is in the house, okay. Does that mean with that same statement, I'm trying to say that doing nafi of ilm? واضح? So we say the water bottle لا يوصف أصلا بالعلم ولا بالجهل. A water bottle cannot be described with knowledge, and neither can it be described with ish? Ignorance. So نقيضان يرتفعان, both two opposites can be lifted from something that cannot be described with one of the two opposites. Does that make sense? We say the moment you affirm one opposite, you're negating the other opposite. The moment you negate this opposite, you're affirming this opposite. That's if they're correct contradictions and real opposites. But this only works in line with what can be defined as such. واضح? So now going back to our point. The qudra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not muta'alliq aslan with the mustahilat aqlan. And if you say it is, then you're going to run into a lot of problems, because then that means that Allah can create a God, another God. So what's the response we give to that question? That can Allah create another being, for example, or another God? Is that in the ability of Allah? We say no, the qudra of Allah is not muta'alliq with the mustahilat aqlan. واضح? This is just, we went off on a tangent over here. This is why, ahbab, you have to study. When you study ulum, study everything. This idea that you study one aspect and you leave the other, and you want to learn this and you don't know that, and so on and so forth. People become scholars and they have no idea what they even believe in. They go through entire programs and graduate, and they don't know the basic fundamental beliefs that we, as a Muslim, you have to uphold. So this is a problem. You study everything, study it properly in its place, and the crux of all of that is how you understand the Qur'an and Sunnah. The alat, the ulum that are the tools, are meant to govern the way you understand the nusus shar'iyyah. They teach you how to understand the nusus shar'iyyah. Starting off with Arabic, then you have aqidah, and we have usul al-fiqh, usul al-hadith. All of these are essential, extremely important. واضح? نعم. So number one, the hadith is establishing karāmāt of al-Awliyā, and this is from the aqidah of the al-Sunnah wal Jamā'ah, because Jurayj was not a nabi, he was a rahib, he was a worshipper, he was a Walī of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, the hadith establishes that within the ta'at, within the acts of obedience, there are maratib. And our Sharia did not create all the acts of obedience in the same level. Within the acts of obedience, there are maratib. There are certain acts of worship that are given preference over other acts of worship when there is ta'arud between the two. Also, the hadith is also establishing that possibly, in fact, they mentioned this in the shuruh as well, that when we said this karāmāt of awliya that can occur, there's another discussion, which is that the karāmah of a wali, can it occur based on his ikhtiyar or not? And one is that Allah grants the wali a karāmah, but one is that it occurs based on his own ikhtiyar. Okay, this is a separate discussion. In this hadith, there's a dalala that the karāmah of a wali can also occur based on his own ikhtiyar. Why? Because Jurayj is the one who said, bring me the child. And he asked the child directly. So what is that? He's asking for the karāmah. Does that make sense? So look at the diqqah of the shurrah and the ulama, and how they extract great ma'ani from these nusus. Jurayj is the one who called for the child, and then he asked the child. What's he doing? He's asking for the karāmah. So the karāmah is occurring based on his own ikhtiyar. And so the ulama that allowed this, they use this dalil as a proof, to prove that the karāmāt also occur. Now, in this regard. طيب. Also, we say that in this hadith, if a person is tested with two things, then he should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as to which one is better. Like Jurayj, for example, when he was tested, he said, Allahumma ummi wa salati. And there's many more fawaid that they mention in the books. We'll stop with this, inshallah, when it comes to this narration. Now, what's the next narration?
طيب,
we'll do this hadith, inshallah, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, tomorrow.